Most people think they know what self-esteem is. Ask around and you'll hear answers like confidence, attitude, self-belief, or even ego. Some people think self-esteem means walking into a room like you own it. Others believe it means being loud, dominant, or fearless. Nathaniel Branden's The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem quietly dismantles all of that. He doesn't shout. He doesn't hype. He doesn't sell shortcuts. Instead, he delivers something far more uncomfortable and far more powerful. He says self-esteem is not something you feel. It's something you practice. Branden begins with a definition that sounds simple but hits hard if you actually think about it. Self-esteem, he says, is made up of two basic experiences. First, the feeling that you are capable of dealing with the challenges of life. And second, the feeling that you are worthy of happiness. Miss either one, and something inside you collapses. You might be competent but feel undeserving. Or you might feel worthy but helpless. In both cases, life feels unstable. This is why people who look confident on the outside can still feel deeply insecure on the inside. Their self-esteem isn't rooted in reality. It's built on approval, performance, or validation. One of the most important things Branden makes clear early on is this: self-esteem is not a gift. It's not something parents give you. It's not something society hands over. And it's definitely not something success magically produces. You can have money, status, admiration, and still feel empty. That's because self-esteem is not the result of what happens to you. It's the result of how you live. And that's where the 6 pillars come in. Not as theories, but as daily ways of being. Everything begins with awareness. Branden calls it living consciously. In simple terms, it means being awake to your life. It means seeing what is actually happening instead of what you wish were happening. Most people live in a kind of psychological sleep. They go through routines, relationships, and careers on autopilot. They avoid uncomfortable truths. They ignore warning signs. They delay difficult conversations. They numb themselves with distractions. Living consciously means choosing to see. It means paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and the consequences they produce. Branden insists that self-esteem cannot grow in denial. You cannot respect yourself if you refuse to respect reality. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. In fact, it often becomes harder at first. You start noticing where you're unhappy. You become aware of compromises you've been making. You see patterns you'd rather not admit exist. But this awareness is not the problem. It's the beginning of strength. When you live consciously, you stop lying to yourself. And when you stop lying to yourself, you begin building trust with yourself. That trust is the first quiet seed of self-esteem. Closely tied to awareness is self-acceptance, and this is where many people get uncomfortable. Self-acceptance does not mean liking everything about yourself. It does not mean approving of your mistakes or excusing harmful behavior. It simply means acknowledging reality without self-hatred. It means saying, "This is what I feel," without shame. "This is what I did," without denial. "This is where I am," without self-contempt. Branden makes a powerful point here. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. When people attack themselves for being afraid, insecure, angry, or confused, they don't become stronger. They become divided. One part of them becomes the judge, and the other becomes the accused. Growth doesn't happen in that environment. Healing doesn't either. Self-acceptance brings integration. It allows you to face your flaws without collapsing under them. It creates an inner climate where change becomes possible rather than threatening. Then comes responsibility. And this is the pillar that destroys the victim mindset. Self-responsibility means recognizing that you are the author of your choices. Not the cause of everything that happens to you, but the one who decides how to respond. It means giving up the comfort of blame. It means letting go of the idea that someone else will fix your life. Branden doesn't deny injustice, trauma, or unfair circumstances. But he insists that clinging to victimhood destroys self-esteem faster than almost anything else. When you see yourself as powerless, you feel powerless. When you believe your life is controlled by other people, other systems, or fate itself, your sense of agency shrinks. Self-responsibility restores that agency. It asks uncomfortable questions. What am I doing that contributes to this situation? What choices am I avoiding? What actions am I postponing? This pillar is heavy because it removes excuses. But it is also liberating because it returns control to where it belongs. In your hands. From responsibility naturally flows self-assertiveness. This is often misunderstood as aggression or dominance. Branden means something very different. Self-assertiveness is the willingness to honor your thoughts, needs, and values in the world. It means expressing yourself honestly. It means saying yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. It means standing up for yourself without apology and without hostility. People who lack self-assertiveness often pride themselves on being agreeable, flexible, and easygoing. But inside, they accumulate resentment. They silence themselves to avoid conflict. They betray their own needs to gain approval. Over time, this erodes self-respect. You cannot consistently abandon yourself and still feel worthy. Branden emphasizes that every time you suppress your truth to please others, you send yourself a message, "My voice doesn't matter." And every time you honor your voice, even quietly, you reinforce self-worth. Another essential pillar is living purposefully. Purpose gives direction to effort. Without it, energy scatters. Life becomes reactive. You wake up responding instead of creating. Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't require fame, wealth, or recognition. It simply requires intention. Goals. A sense that your actions are moving you somewhere you've consciously chosen. Branden explains that self-esteem grows when we experience ourselves as effective. Planning, setting goals, and following through on them sends a powerful message to the psyche: I can shape my life. Even small goals matter. Especially small goals. Purpose turns time into something meaningful rather than something to be survived. When people drift without direction, they often feel empty or restless, even if they can't explain why. Purpose anchors identity. It tells you who you are becoming. Finally, Branden arrives at integrity. This is perhaps the deepest and most unforgiving pillar. Integrity means alignment. It means your actions match your values. Your words match your beliefs. Your promises match your behavior. Every time you act against what you know is right for you, something inside weakens. Branden calls self-betrayal a silent killer of self-esteem. It doesn't scream. It whispers. But over time, it destroys self-trust. You cannot respect yourself if you do not trust yourself. And you cannot trust yourself if you repeatedly violate your own standards. Integrity is not perfection. Everyone fails. Everyone falls short. Integrity is about honesty. Owning your actions. Correcting course. Choosing to live in a way that allows you to look at yourself without flinching. What makes Branden's framework so powerful is that none of these pillars stand alone. Awareness supports acceptance. Acceptance enables responsibility. Responsibility demands assertiveness. Assertiveness clarifies purpose. Purpose requires integrity. And integrity deepens awareness. It's a cycle. Break one part, and the whole structure weakens. Strengthen one part, and the others begin to rise with it. The book's message is not comforting, but it is empowering. It doesn't promise that life will be easy if you build self-esteem. It promises something better. It promises that you will be stronger. That you will meet challenges with clarity instead of collapse. That you will rely less on approval and more on self-trust. High self-esteem does not mean you never feel fear. It means fear does not define your choices. It does not mean you never fail. It means failure does not destroy your identity. Branden ultimately reminds us that self-esteem is a long-term relationship with yourself. It is built moment by moment, choice by choice. It is not created by pretending, performing, or proving. It is created by living consciously, accepting yourself, taking responsibility, expressing your truth, pursuing purpose, and acting with integrity. Every day you practice these, your inner foundation strengthens. And when that foundation is strong, no external approval is required to hold you up. In the end, Nathaniel Branden leaves us with a truth that is both grounding and demanding. Self-esteem is not about feeling good all the time. It is not about confidence on good days or motivation when things are easy. It is about the relationship you build with yourself when no one is watching. It is about the standards you hold when shortcuts are available. It is about the honesty you practice when denial would be more comfortable. Self-esteem is not something you have. It is something you do. Every time you choose awareness over avoidance, acceptance over self-attack, responsibility over blame, expression over silence, purpose over drifting, and integrity over convenience, you strengthen it. And every time you don't, you weaken it. It really is that simple. And that's serious. The powerful thing is this: you don't need to fix your entire life to begin. You don't need a perfect plan or a massive transformation. You just need one conscious choice today. One honest conversation. One boundary you stop breaking. One promise you actually keep. These small acts may look insignificant from the outside, but inside, they are seismic. They tell your mind again and again, I can be trusted. If there is one takeaway from this book, it's this: no one is coming to give you self-worth. No achievement will hand it to you. No relationship will sustain it. It has to be built from the inside, through how you live. And the moment you start living differently, even slightly, everything else begins to shift. So here's the real question. Which pillar are you neglecting right now? Where are you betraying yourself, even in small ways? And what is one action you can take today to start rebuilding that inner foundation? Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for confidence. Start with awareness. Start with responsibility. Start with truth. Because the strongest version of you is not the one who feels fearless. It's the one who shows up anyway. If this message resonated with you, don't just move on. Sit with it. Apply it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, commit to living in a way that earns your own respect. Because when you do, everything else in life starts to align. That's where real self-esteem begins.